Chapter 729. Duan Jinghong will accompany me. Song Shin is ambitious and inhumane. Although I've been disabled for quite a few years now, my biggest dream is still to personally see Song Shin being sent to prison. Song Xiaoxiao's words were firm and strong, carrying with it a deep sense of hatred. Her feelings were on the same page as Tang Ning. The way that Huo Jingjing was injured and the way that she almost had a miscarriage. Tang Ning would never forget it for the rest of her life. So, she and Song Xiaoxiao had their eyes set on the same target. Song Shin wasn't going to have the chance to escape the law again. Even through the television screen, viewers could feel Song Xiaoxiao's pain, especially when they looked at the empty space where her leg used to be. All of a sudden, Song Shin's cruel actions were known by everyone. Song Shin didn't expect Hai Rui to bring up an old case as their trump card. She realized she had been much too naive. It turned out, even without using Duan Jinghong's accusation, they could still destroy her. After all, she had done too many bad things. Soon, Song Shin received a phone call from her lawyer telling her that he had no way of bailing her out. This time, he then told her to go overseas as soon as possible to hide out. But Song Shin didn't want to admit defeat. How could she lose like this? She couldn't possibly lose. Even so, she couldn't prevent the police from taking her back to the police station. Back to the same room with the same officer. "Miss Song, we meet again. Who will you use as your shield this time?" Like last time, Song Shin did not say a word. It seemed she was waiting for Elder Song. He was her last chance. But, in reality, after Elder Song awoke from his surgery and saw the news, he simply spent the next half an hour smoking in his hospital room. Monsieur, he could never imagine that he had brought up such a monster. How am I to face people from now on? The news continued to broadcast the live situation at Hai Rui's press conference. At this point, Song Shin's reputation seemed like it was already beyond repair. But, even so, Song Shin still continued to deny her crimes and remain mentally firm and stable. This was until the police received news that Elder Song had committed suicide at the hospital. After receiving the report, the interrogating officer returned to the interrogation room and placed some documents in front of Song Shin. "I've seen plenty of cruel women in the past. Ones that chop up their husbands and strangle their daughters. But, when faced with solid evidence, they never continue to play tricks like you do. If you still have a bit of conscience left in you, you should pay your grandfather back with your life." In that instant, Song Shin didn't quite understand the officer's words, until she saw Elder Song's death certificate. "What happened to my grandfather? How did my grandfather die? Why did he die? Shouldn't you ask yourself that?" After speaking, the officer handed a suicide note from Elder Song to Song Shin. As she glanced down at the snow-white envelope, Song Shin finally realized that her hands were trembling. Seeing this, the officer grabbed the envelope and helped her open it. This is the last time that grandfather will be calling your name. After seeing all the bad things you've done, grandfather can no longer face the world. All I can do is use my life to pay back for all the bad things you've done. This is my retribution. Retribution for not teaching you properly. And your retribution is to lose the only family you've left on earth. I hereby declare that all my assets will be donated to charity. I do not wish for them to go to a cruel-hearted person like you. From now on, you are on your own. All the best." After reading the short note, Song Shin broke down. "This can't be possible. My grandfather can't possibly die. He's dead. You were the cause of his death. You killed your grandfather." The officer yelled at Song Shin. "If I was him, I would have chopped you up before killing myself. That would have been a valuable contribution to society." Song Shin's eyes grew wide as she sat paralyzed in her seat. Eventually, she kneeled onto the floor and cried, "I didn't cause my grandfather's death. I didn't. They did." Elder Song sure is unfortunate to have a granddaughter like this. In the end, all he could do was pay with his life. Long Jia was at Hyatt Regency helping Teng Ning with the babies. Although it is quite a pity. I guess this is life. They all say that children are one's enemies from a past life. Here to get payback. I wonder what Elder Song did in his past life to avoid Song Shin so much. Teng Ning smiled as she received the baby from Long Jia's hands. Although it is quite a pity, there's nothing we can do about it. But, even at this point, Song Shin is still refusing to speak. Doesn't she feel any guilt towards her grandfather? Teng Ning shook her head. Just as she was about to place the baby into its cot, she received a phone call from Lu Che. Song Shin has confessed. After visiting the hospital and seeing her grandfather's body, she could no longer control herself and finally revealed everything to the police. Isn't this great? Long Jia asked as she looked at Teng Ning. We finally disposed of the demoness. If she could still act like nothing happened after this, then God would have had to send a lightning bolt to strike her to death. How hated was Song Shin? One look at the tens of thousands of comments left online would be enough to answer this question. Although it sounds cruel, I hope the judge sentences her to death. If they could cut her up, one slice at a time, that would be even better. Song Shin is a disgusting B*TCH. She caused her own grandfather to die. Is she happy now? I hope the police don't let her have an easy death. It's better for her to spend life in prison. Meanwhile, at the police station, Song Shin had indeed confessed to a few crimes. But, when it came to Huo Jingjing's incident and provoking Hua Wenfeng, she still refused to admit defeat. In fact, she said to the police, if you want me to confess to these crimes, then get Teng Ning to see me in person. Teng Ning is no longer someone that you can see, the officer said as he put on her handcuffs. You will only have the walls of prison to accompany you for the rest of your life and you will never see the light of day again. No, Duan Jinghong will accompany me. Song Shin tried to find the last bit of comfort, but the police quickly destroyed her hopes. You're wrong. Duan Jinghong has been praised for surrendering herself to the police. Plus, the victim has forgiven her. Her punishment will be much lighter than yours. There is a fine line between good and bad, and this fine line is enough to determine whether you go to heaven or hell. Sit back and wait for your sentence. As it was a big case that shook the entire entertainment industry, Song Shin continued to receive the attention of the public. With the numerous incidences added together, Song Shin's punishments were enough to last her a lifetime. The happiest person at this time would probably be Hua Wenfeng. She was going to have company very soon. The entire incident came to an end at the same time that Chen Xingyan completed her filming. After returning to Beijing, she and Zihao went to visit Teng Ning at Hyatt Regency. Seeing her two nephews, Chen Xingyan was filled with glee. Teng Ning noticed and Zihao's gaze followed Chen Xingyan. So she laughed and asked, are you guys in a relationship? And Zihao shook his head. We are just normal business partners. Chapter 730. I really don't want to go to prison. Teng Ning did not expose the monsieur, she simply smiled. Even if Zihao could hide his feelings, Chen Xingyan could not. Now that the babies are born, will you return to filming? And Zihao already began to think ahead for Teng Ning's future. Your acting is really good. You can't just waste it like that. The crew of Concubine Ning is waiting for you. Teng Ning's gaze turned gentle as she watched Chen Xingyan carry one of the babies. Let's talk about it later. These two rascals can't leave my side at the moment. You're not planning to announce it to the public yet? I need to leave the headlines for Song Shin first. And Zihao's gaze deepened as he looked at Teng Ning. He originally thought, after all the schemes that Teng Ning had experienced in the entertainment industry, she had become unfazed by it. But, in reality, she still had a burning passion for acting. However, right now, the entire nation had their eyes on Song Shin's fate. A celebrity had committed a crime. The fascination for this story wasn't something that would fade easily. By the time that Mo Ting returned home later that night, Chen Xinyan and Zihao had already left. Mo Ting first hugged Tingning before he walked over to check on the babies. I've already asked Lu Che to contact a few people. They will take good care of Song Shin. The rest of her life in prison doesn't sound like it will be very nice. Tingning laughed gently as she shook her head. Rest of her life? That will only be the case if she can survive that long. Of course, Mo Ting did not say what he was thinking. However, the mention of Song Shin made his eyes fill with hatred and darkness. Meanwhile, after Zihao escorted Chen Xinyan back to his apartment, he headed back out again. Chen Xinyan did not know where he was going. She simply had a shower and waited patiently on the sofa for his return. But, at this time, Zihao had arrived at a relatively old housing estate and entered one of the buildings familiarly. Yun Shin's father had given him a phone call. Mother Yun was sick. Ever since Yun Shin's death, Zihao had taken care of her parents. Although he didn't visit them often, whenever something serious happened, he would see to it personally. Zihao, your Auntie Yun went to the hospital to do an examination and the doctor suggested for her to get treatment overseas. I don't understand what's going on. What should we do? Uncle, don't panic. Let me have a look at Auntie first, Zihao said before he pushed open the door to Mother Yun's bedroom. Monsieur, seeing the old lady lying in bed, he approached her bedside and asked, Auntie, are you okay? Zihao, you're here. Mother Yun appeared weathered and her breathing was weak, but she still managed to grab onto Zihao's hands. Zihao, I'm really suffering. Don't ever abandon us. Don't ever to get married and forget about our Yun Shin. Auntie, even if I get married, I will still take care of you on behalf of Yun Shin, Zihao replied calmly. No, Auntie Yun suddenly growled. You belong to Yun Shin. You can't marry someone else. If you find another woman, I won't be able to continue living. Quote, quote, quote. Father Yun stood behind the two. Seeing Zihao look slightly upset, he immediately comforted his wife. He won't. Zihao will never forget Yun Shin. Zihao did not say a word. After visiting the old couple, he hopped back into his car and drove out of the estate. Upon returning to his apartment, he did not mention a word of it to Chen Xinyan. Yun Shin was Yun Shin. She was already in the past. He was well aware of this. As for Yun Shin's parents, it seemed they were afraid that he'd start a new relationship because they had relied on him too much over the years. But he had to get married sooner or later. Right. Why aren't you sleeping? Zihao asked as he noticed Chen Xinyan huddled up on the sofa. He walked over and turned off the television. You have a packed schedule tomorrow. Don't be naughty. Go to sleep. But, Zihao did not say anything else as he headed straight for the study room. Monsieur. For some reason he felt frustrated even though he knew that Yun Shin's parents weren't his responsibility. Chen Xinyan snuck into the study room and quietly placed herself on Zihao's lap. Come sleep with me? I still have stuff to do. You obviously have nothing. Chen Xinyan exposed his lie. Listen to me. Go to bed first. There's something bothering you, Chen Xinyan said as she shook Zihao's neck. I heard the question that Ningjia asked you today. Why didn't you just admit to it? I haven't prepared myself to go against Mo Ting yet, Zihao said as he looked into Chen Xinyan's eyes. Plus, he still had to resolve the issue with Yun Shin's parent. Why does he have the right to make such an important decision in my life? Chen Xinyan scoffed. I can marry whomever I want. Hearing the word marry, Zihao suddenly let out a laugh as he held onto her cheeks and asked, You haven't truly understood me yet. How do you know that you won't regret? Will you make me regret? I will try my best to bring you happiness, Zihao replied as he carried Chen Xinyan in his arms out of the study room into the bedroom. Monsieur, can you go to sleep now? Chen Xinyan stared at Zihao for a while without saying a word. In the end, she nodded her head, closed her eyes and went to sleep. But, for some reason, she felt a little unsettled tonight. She noticed there was something abnormal about An Zihao. When a person loved another deeply, they always seemed to become sensitive and suspicious. An Zihao was her first love, so she naturally invested her everything into the relationship and wasn't afraid of anything. But, what about An Zihao? An Zihao ended up spending the entire night contemplating in the study room Monsieur before Chen Xingyan. He had never imagined falling in love again, so he never addressed the incorrect ideals of Yuan Shen's parents. But now, he was regretful that he had dealt with it earlier. It seemed he needed to clarify with the two elders that he cared for them because of the love he once had for their daughter, but he didn't know them anything. As for the reason why he didn't reveal his relationship to Tang Ning, it was because, before he resolved the issue, he didn't know how he could guarantee Chen Xingyan's happiness. Mo Ting was accustomed to doting his wife. He would never allow An Zihao to have something so problematic that could hurt Chen Xingyan in the future. Many days later, Song Shin's case was finally presented in court. As it affected so many people, the judge held a public trial so the entire nation could see her final sentence. Prison was more tortuous than Song Shin had ever imagined. In a short span of 1 month, Song Shin appeared completely helpless and exhausted. She had completely transformed from the once arrogant composer. In comparison, Duan Jinghong appeared unfazed. In the end, Song Shin was sentenced to 20 years in prison for inflicting grievous bodily harm with intent and instigating crimes. 20 years. Hearing this number, Song Shin fell apart as she knelt on the floor and pleaded, "I know I was wrong. I know what I've done was wrong. Please, let me go. I don't want to go to prison. I really don't want to go to prison." However, seeing her like this merely made most people think of 3 words. What a pity. Hit the like, thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you for listening.